Our Bible passage today is 2 Corinthians chapter 13 verse 8. 2 Corinthians chapter 13 verse 8. And the title of the message is Genocide against Nigeria Christians. What is the truth? Genocide against Nigeria Christians. What is the truth? In the past few days, going to weeks now, there has been a controversy in Nigeria stretching to United States of America, where some senators raised alarm that Christians are being massacred in Nigeria and there is genocide going on. And the government of Nigeria rejected it, insisting that there was and there is no genocide. Muslim leaders got up and said there is no genocide, and the Senate also joined and said there is no genocide. And to make matters worse, Christian Association of Nigeria got up and said there is no genocide, until public uproar in the church made them issue another statement admitting there is persecution of Christians, but pointing out that it is not only Christians that are being killed, that Muslims too are being killed. And some other church leaders have also come out to say there is no genocide. One says that we should resist the temptation of saying there is religious persecution in Nigeria, that the truth of the matter is that people are being killed, whether they are Muslims or they are Christians. And some insist that more Muslims are killed than Christians. So we want to examine the matter today as Christians. What is the truth? I'm going to share the screen, my screen, because I want to show us two quotes, which I'm going to read, but because I want us to understand fully well what I am reading, I will share the screen and display those two quotes. Sorry, I think it is the wrong file that I am displaying there. Just give me a second. I will pull up the right one. Okay, I have the right one. In just a few seconds now, the right one will be on the screen for all of us to see. Okay, there we have it. It's a quote from a man named Richard G. Hovannisian. Richard G. Hovannisian. And he defines denial as the final stage of a genocidal process. That when genocide is committed, the final stage of that process is denial and the erasing of the memories of the victim group. I will quote him. I will quote, "Following the physical destruction of a people and their material culture, memory is all that is left and is targeted as the last victim. Complete annihilation of a people requires the banishment of recollection and suffocation of remembrance. Falsification, deception, and half-truths reduce what was to what might have been, or perhaps what was not at all. those, unquote, those who commit genocide, after they have done it, they now embark on the final process to wipe out the memory of the people group by falsifying narrative, by denying what they did, and then they begin to rationalize that what happened, well, it might have happened in some areas, and then it goes on to, it never happened at all. In 1945, another quote, which I'm going to share with us. In 1945, at the end of the Second World War, General D. Eisenhower, the American general who led the Allied forces, upon entering a concentration camp in Germany and seeing the horrors of the Holocaust, he said, General Eisenhower said, I quote, "Get it all on record now. Get the films. Get the witnesses. Because somewhere down the track of history, some bastard will get up and say that this never happened." Please, note that again. Somewhere down the track of history, some bastard will get up and say that this never happened. It will be denied. It was therefore not surprising when in 2005, the then president of Iran, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, said on 14th December 2005 that the Holocaust was a myth. The Holocaust never took place. That it was created, it was a myth created by the Zionists to garner international sympathy, that there was no Holocaust. This statement followed an earlier remark Ahmadinejad made in 2005 in October of the same year that Israel should be wiped off the map. 20 years after this unfortunate statement, in 2005, we are now in 2025, October 2025, the Islamists of northern Nigeria, supported by their Christian collaborators in the church, said there was no genocide in Nigeria. Now, it is usual for mass murderers to deny their actions, particularly when the consequence is about to descend on them. In this case of Nigeria, the consequence is the possibility of the United States government designating Nigeria again as a country of particular concern, which may have effect on 2027 elections. That is the consequence that people are denying. Because in the year 2020, if you remember, in the year 2020, United States of America designated Nigeria a CPC, a country of particular concern. This is not the first time. It was done under Buhari. It was when President Biden came into White House that he removed Nigeria from that designation as a country of particular concern because of the politics of the Democrats, the far left. And the genocide continued. So when the U.S. is now contemplating placing Nigeria again as a country of particular concern, all this controversy is now coming up that it is not true. There was no genocide. As we go on in this ministration today, we shall provide evidence that there was and there is indeed genocide going on in Nigeria, so that Christians will not be distracted. As the narrative is being distorted, the tendency is for Christians themselves who don't have the details of what happened, particularly in the South and outside Nigeria, to begin to rationalize with them that maybe there was no genocide at all. There was genocide. From 2015, the National Christian Elders Forum produced over 121 papers engaging the government and leaders of Islam that there was targeted elimination of Christians in Nigeria, and there was a deliberate attempt to undermine democracy in Nigeria and replace democracy with Sharia ideology. I am the secretary of the National Christian Elders Forum. I have been the secretary of National Christian Elders Forum since January 2015, when NCEF started. These over 121 papers that I mentioned, 2 of us wrote those papers. Mr. Solomon Asemota, the former chairman of NCF, and I know what is in those papers. Mr. Asemota wrote some, I wrote some, we worked on many together, and even the one that Mr. Asemota wrote, I edited it. So nobody can get up and tell me there was no genocide. Then what were we writing since 2015 that nobody could prove us wrong, that nobody could check us, that nobody could arrest us? Because if we wrote over 121 papers and they are lies, then the government will have taken action. We issued a press release in July 2017, NCEF, National Christian Elders Forum. That press release was entitled Correct Assessment of the Situation in Nigeria. Please go on. I want to be sure I'm there. The press release was entitled Correct Assessment of the Situation in Nigeria. You can find all these papers at csmnigeria.org. csmnigeria.org. Christian Social Movement Nigeria.org. When you get to the home page of CSMN website, you will see on top NCEF papers. Just click on NCEF papers. You will see all the 121 papers. I did not include in that on that website the papers that we wrote after the year 2020. I stopped posting those papers from 2020 in 2020. But there are other papers that we wrote 2021, 2022, 2023, 24. Even this year, we have also released papers from NCEF. After we released that paper of July 2017, Correct Assessment of the Situation in Nigeria, some Muslim leaders raised objection in the media. Then we produced a paper in September 2017, titled Jihad in Nigeria, Burying the Head in the Sand. After we produced that paper, I now summarized the points in that paper and reproduced it as a summary, which we titled List We Forget. That was in October 2017. In these two papers, Jihad in Nigeria, Burying the Head in the Sand, and List We Forget, in October 2017, both of them in 2017, we asked the Islamists 9 questions. 9 questions. Till today, no Muslim leader could provide answer to one of those 9 questions. Till I'm talking to you today. That will be 8 years after. Nobody, none of them, no government official, no Islamic leader, including the Sultan of Sokoto, none of them could provide an answer. 9 questions. That if they say there is no genocide, they should answer these questions. They could not answer till I'm talking to you now. So whoever is claiming that there was no genocide in Nigeria, or genocide is not going on against Christians, has a Herculean task of disproving over 121 papers of NCEF on this matter. The fellow has to prove that those papers are false. And since 2015, nobody has been able to challenge any paper that we wrote. Now, that is one evidence on one side. Between 2013 and 2015, the Voice of Christian Martyrs Nigeria documented the genocide against Christians in 5 magazines entitled Martyrs Cry. Martyrs Cry. The Voice of Christian Martyrs reasoned that, look, most people do not read long reports. And that is true. Most people don't read long reports. So, we proceeded at the Voice of Christian Martyrs to produce the facts of the genocide in magazine format, as magazines, with pictures of the victims, narration of the attacks, narration of the events, the dates that those attacks took place, the testimonies of the survivors, the pictures of surviving children and widows. Every information that what we did not include was to show the picture of the corpses because of decency. Each magazine was 60 pages, making a total of 300 pages of documented evidence of genocide against Christians in Nigeria. Again, I will tell you, not only do I know about those magazines, I produced each one. I wrote the stories in each magazine. I produced each page of those magazines. Because I was in Maiduguri with the Voice of Christian Martyrs. I was in Gombe. I was in Jos. I was in Bauchi. I went to Bogoro. I went to Tafa Balewa. I was in Kaduna. I was in Dutse. I was in Kano. I was traveling with the Voice of Christian Martyrs, documenting the evidence of genocide, gathering information about what was going on in Nigeria, why it was going on, and where it was leading to. It was the information that I gathered that I used to deliver the wake-up call message in May of 2014. That message that went viral, it was as a result of the information that I gathered. That was the reason I could tell Nigerians, don't allow APC to form government. All progressive government. And I told Nigerians, if APC should form government, you will see suffering, you will see sorrow. And some people got up in the church, they contested what I said, they abused me, they held press conferences because they thought it was politics. Now, 11 years after APC has come into power, nobody is arguing again with the wake-up call. Why will anybody now come up and say there was no genocide? The 5 magazines, I will give you the title of the 5 magazines. You can find all those 5 magazines at houseofcaris.net. Houseofcaris.net. If you go to houseofcaris.net, just go to the home page. You will find the 5 magazines listed here. Click on any of them. Download the magazine and read. The 5 magazines are: number 1, the widows of the martyrs. The second one, the survivors. The third one, faith in the face of death. The fourth one, don't stand in silence. The fifth one, they chose to be Christians. Go through the list of the producer of those magazines, the one that they put at the beginning of each magazine. You will see my name there as the editor. I produced each one. I wrote all the stories. I designed each page. It was produced in my office. And I did it for the Voice of Christian Matthias free of charge. I did not charge a single kobo. I didn't collect money. I stopped every other thing that I was doing and I concentrated on that job as a ministry to the church. I did not send Voice of Christian Matthias a bill or an invoice. I did not ask them to pay me. The only thing I asked is that they will pay for the printing, because that was very expensive. And Voice of Christian Matthias paid for the printing. We produced those magazines in thousands and distributed them free. None was sold. To Christians in particular and Nigerians in general, that listen, there is genocide going on. They are killing Christians and it is deliberate. I give you some accounts. On 10th of March 2010, 10th of March 2010, in a Christian village called Dogonawa in Jos, Plateau State, 501 Christians were slaughtered in one night by Fulani terrorists. 501. The mass grave was beautified by the Voice of Christian Matthias. In fact, the day we went to Dogonawa to visit the people, because I was there in Dogonawa, I picked the stone from that mass grave. I have been carrying the stone with me since then. On 7th July, let me just finish that by asking a question. If that was not genocide, what was it? 501 Christians were slaughtered in one night by Fulani terrorists. Fulani terrorists. If that was not genocide, what was it? On 7th July 2012, at Masse Cotton, I probably did not pronounce it well, forgive me, I'm not from Plateau, but Masse Cotton Kasua Tapun Dabe in a Riyom local government of Plateau State, Riyom local government, Fulani terrorists invaded the village. 7 July 2012. There was a pastor in that village. His name was Pastor John Alidoro. They came around 7 a.m. The moment Pastor John sighted the Fulanis with their weapons entering the village, he fled. He thought they came for him. So he fled immediately into the bush. The other villagers did not sense danger. All of them ran to his house, to their pastor's house, because that was the only place they believed they would be safe. The Fulani terrorists killed the wife of Pastor John. They killed all his 6 children. They killed a total of 67 Christians in that village that morning, 7 July 2012, and they burnt their corpses. If that was not genocide, what was it? What was it? Could the government of Nigeria answer? If that was not genocide, what was it? Can officials answer? If that was not genocide, what was it? On 28th November 2012, in Potiskum, Yobe State, Boko Haram attacked the home of Brother Adamu Habila, broke into his house, and commanded him to recite the Kamatul Shahada, which is the recitation, the confession of conversion to Islam. And Brother Adamu refused. One of the Boko Haram placed the barrel of AK-47 on the nose of Brother Adamu. They told him to kneel down in his sitting room. They placed the barrel on his nose, and the Muslims said since you refuse to become a Muslim, here is your reward. And he fired. By some miraculous intervention, the bullet did not go straight into Adamu's brain. It slanted and it tore out his jaw. Adamu survived. He was treated. He's alive till I'm talking today. And he traveled to US to share his testimony. I'm aware he traveled to US to share his testimony. I went around some churches in Lagos. I went to a particular church in Lagos, let me put it that, with Adamu to go and share his testimony. Then Adamu went to some churches in Nigeria that I'm aware of to share his testimony. If that was not targeted killing of Christians, brethren, what was it? The fourth example I'm going to cite, if you go online to look at those magazines, the website again is House of Caris. House as in the house you live in, of Caris, Karis, .net, net. Go there, houseofcaris.net. You will find those magazines there. There are documented evidence that there was genocide. Monica Dra, the fourth story I will tell you quickly, was in Maiduguri. Her husband was shot dead in her presence because he was a Christian. Then the Boko Haram terrorists turned to Monica and asked Monica, "Are you a Muslim?" Monica knew if she said she wasn't a Muslim, she would be killed. Nevertheless, she faced the terrorists and declared, "I am a Christian, I am not a Muslim." They shot Monica. They slit the throat of Monica. They didn't shoot her, it was her husband they shot. They slit her throat and threw her down on the sandy floor, just outside. They were arrested, they were accosted outside, and she was left there to bleed to death. Monica was in that state for 3 days. Miraculously, she survived. She survived because she said as she was slipping in and out of consciousness, she was aware, she saw some beings that surrounded her. Those beings were dressed in white and they had wings. Said she will come out of consciousness and she will see all those beings that surrounded her. They were comforting her, they were strengthening her. For 3 days, they were there with her until she was rescued. Of course, we can now say those were angels. And that is the reason that she survived after her throat had been slit. I took a photograph with Monica in Maiduguri. I met Monica Dra personally. And I took a picture with her in Maiduguri. So if anybody comes and he says there is no genocide, that fellow is telling a lie, deliberate lie. There was genocide in Nigeria against Christians. That the Muslim leaders and the government officials deny genocide was not surprising because of the Islamic doctrine called taqiyya. There is something in Islam called taqiyya which permits Muslims to lie to protect the religion. Muslims are allowed to lie to protect the religion. It is called taqiyya, and a lot of Christians seem not to be aware of what is called taqiyya in Islam. So that the Muslims will tell a lie is not a problem. That one is not a problem at all. The problem that we now have is that there are Christian leaders who are now repeating what the Muslims are saying. There are now Christian leaders who are joining in this distortion of narratives. And that is what is now worrisome. The argument of those Christian leaders is that insecurity is pervasive in Nigeria. It is not only Christians that were killed. Muslims were also killed. In fact, more Muslims were killed than Nigerians. Now, does this negate the fact of genocide against Christians? Now, let's get this clear. It is a fact that Muslims were killed in Nigeria. It is a fact. But the question is, who killed them? The Muslims that were killed, who killed them? They were killed by their fellow Muslims. Those Muslims were not killed for their faith. The Muslims have internal conflict amongst themselves. Whether that conflict is ethnic or not, they have conflict amongst themselves. It is clear there is a fight going on between Hausa and Fulani now. It is the Muslims killing the Muslims. This cannot be equated with the killing of Christians, which is a different religion from Islam. It is that attack of a religious group, Islam, against another religious group, Christianity, that constitutes genocide. Not just the fact that people are killed. You have to define what genocide is. It is the group, a different group, attacking another different group to eliminate them, that constitutes genocide. So those who are trying to prove that insecurity is pervasive, Muslims are killed as well as Christians are killed, they are dishonest. They are dishonest. They are being clever by half. What they should explain is who killed the Muslims. It is Muslims killing the Muslims. That is not genocide. Except you can now make a case for the Muslims that it was a different ethnic group, like it is Muslims from Fulani ethnic groups that are killing Muslims from Hausa ethnic group, then that becomes a genocide against the Hausas. But so long as it is Muslims killing Muslims, it's not genocide. When Christians are killed by Muslims, it is genocide, because that is a group, a different faith that wants to eliminate another group. So those church leaders should go and ask God for forgiveness. Instead of defending their Christian brethren, they are defending the position of the Muslims and defending the positions of the Muslim ticket presidency. And what they have done queries their Christian commitment and their loyalty to Jesus Christ. Clearly, it was not Holy Spirit speaking through those church leaders. There is a different spirit speaking through them. There should be a limit to greed and covetousness in the church. Now, in rounding up, I will point out another fact, because another controversy has started over this matter. That there are certain foreign nations that are displacing population groups in Nigeria in their effort to steal mineral resources and what is called rare earth. There is a mineral called rare earth. And it is those foreign companies, foreign international corporations, foreign nations that are behind this displacement. Of course, it is an attempt to say it is not Muslims who are behind the killings in Nigeria, that it is foreign countries who are manipulating the insecurity, the terrorism in Nigeria, to drive Nigerian people off certain portions of land where they have seen mineral resources and they want to exploit it. Of course, the matter of international economic banditry is common. It is not only in Nigeria. It is common in most African countries that have abundant mineral resources. It is common. But in this case, the accusing finger is pointing at USA. Now, if this accusing finger that what is going on are international corporations alone, please note that word alone, that are displacing populations in Nigeria, then it will nullify what the American senators are saying. It will nullify whatever the American government wants to do, that there is no genocide in Nigeria. It is you Americans that are causing the problem there. That is the idea. And that is why this matter has to be addressed. We agree there are international corporations who engage in economic banditry. That is correct. But it should be noted, United States of America did not convene the Islam in Africa Organization Conference. There was a conference organized by Islam in Africa Organization, IAO, in November 1989 in Abuja. That conference produced a communique titled Abuja Declarations 1989. Every Christian should read that declaration, and you will see that everything that is going on in Nigeria is the implementation of that Islam in Africa Organization Conference. And that conference resolved to eradicate Christianity in Nigeria. It is in their communique. To eradicate, I will quote that portion, to eradicate in all its forms and ramifications all non-Muslim religions in member nations. Such religions shall include Christianity. In the original printout of that communique, the word Christianity was underlined. United States of America did not organize that conference. So those who are saying US is behind this genocide and this terrorism, they are wrong. Number two, OIC, Organization of Islamic Conference, held a strategy meeting in London in 1983. 1983. And at that conference, OIC strategized how to turn Africa into an Islamic continent. They produced a document, 356 pages or so, 156 pages focused on Nigeria. And they detailed how they are going to undermine Nigeria, attack Nigeria, and turn Nigeria into an Islamic nation. Because in their strategy meeting, they identified 7 key nations that must first be Islamized in Africa before the whole of Africa can become an Islamic continent. And Nigeria is one of those 7 nations. Now, United States of America did not organize that OIC conference. Number 3, the repeated religious riots in northern Nigeria that targeted Christians and Christian properties for destruction. Those religious riots were not organized by United States of America. So if anybody is now coming up to say there is economic banditry and USA is the one who is causing displacement of population in Nigeria, and that is the reason there is attack on Christians, please tell the fellow you are wrong. Because the Muslims actually planned and they launched the attack of what they are going to do. The Muslims must accept responsibility for the genocide against Christians in Nigeria. There was an international report, an international research in 2019 that produced a report in 2020. That report was entitled Silent Slaughter. It was on the basis of that research report, Silent Slaughter, that United States in 2020 designated Nigeria a country of particular concern. I mentioned it earlier that sanction was lifted by President Biden. The current uproar in Nigeria about Nigeria becoming a CPC country again is more political than patriotic, because if Nigeria should be designated CPC, it may have impact on 2027 elections. People are using the genocide of Christians to play politics. The truth of the matter, in conclusion, there is genocide, and the Muslims must accept responsibility for it. Germany accepted responsibility for the genocide the Nazis committed. They built a house in Bonn, Haus der Geschichte, House of History in Bonn. I was there. When we were living in Germany, we visited Haus der Geschichte to see the history of the Second World War. The Germans kept every detail of what happened, including pictures, including videos, including the tank, the guns, including the car of Adolf Hitler. They kept all the details. And you know what the Germans do? When their sons get to the age of 8, 9, 10, they take their son to Haus der Geschichte to go and see the horrors of what Germans did to the Israelites, to see the horrors of the concentration camps. And they will tell their sons, never again. It must never happen again. The day we went to the Haus der Geschichte, we saw a German with his son. That boy was around 9 years old. That boy was shedding tears. He was crying profusely. What he was saying, his father did not let him go. He kept his face looking at those videos, at those pictures, and he kept explaining to him what happened and telling him, vida ni, never again. It must never happen again. So they imprinted on the consciousness of their sons that genocide, mass killing of people must never happen again in Germany. And those children grow up with that mentality. Why don't the leaders of the Fulani, why don't they call these Fulani bandits to order? Why are they rather busy denying what they did? When the Niger Delta Avengers, when they started and they said they were going to fight the Nigeria state, the Niger Delta elders, Niger Delta traditional rulers, they entered the creeks It's a historical fact. They went to meet those boys in the creeks. It was the elders who persuaded them to come to the negotiating table. That they should lay down their arms and come to the negotiating table. That was why the reason the amnesty program of President Yar'Adua succeeded. It wasn't the government who brought those boys to the negotiating table. It was the elders of Niger Delta. Now the Fulani herdsmen, the Fulani bandits, the Fulani terrorists have been killing Nigerians for years. Why don't the leaders of the Fulani call them and stop them? Instead of denying what they have done. Denial means those who are doing this genocide have no intention of stopping. Even as this controversy is raging, the terrorists continue killing. That is the implication. They don't want to stop. And they don't believe they should stop. But they don't want that CPC designation. They don't want the world exposing and looking at what they are doing, but they don't want to stop. And Christian leaders who are joining them to promote this counter-narrative, this distortion of narratives, you are doing Jesus Christ a great injustice. Those Christian leaders, you are spitting on the grave of the martyrs. You will all render account before God. Look, there are some things that will not be judged in this world. But let me assure you, every matter will be judged by God. Wherever you stand in this matter, you will face judgment. And some judgments are going to be eternal. It will have eternal consequences. I want to pray that God will comfort all the Christians who have been affected in these mindless killings by our compatriots. I pray that God will comfort them. I pray that God will comfort and protect the survivors. I pray that God will intervene and bring this madness to an end. But that somebody will say that there was no genocide against Christians in Nigeria, it is a lie. There was and there is still ongoing genocide. May the Lord protect his people in the name of Jesus Christ. Let us bow our heads and pray.